This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, we've got a new host today, Sam Dundas from Besty, filling in for Brandy today. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, and thank you, Brandy, for taking a seat on the bench so I could step in today. Appreciate it if you're listening.
Oh, she's always listening. Trust me, she's gonna have a Brandy rant about this one. So, for the listeners, yes, we are. I'm just going to say it. We're pre-recording. It's Friday, but you're listening to it on Monday, and I'm traveling. Brandy's traveling, so we figured let's break in a guest host today. Sam has been a guest on the show before when we interviewed him about your company, Besty AI, and all the fun, exciting things that we're doing together as we got to join as advisors. But now today you are in the host seat on top of kind of getting to share a little bit more. So for the listeners that haven't heard about you guys, catch us up. How have you been since the last time having you on the show?
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. This working in this industry has been honestly such a dream come true. It's like the people, the conferences, the working in the product every day. It's just like it's just such a blast. And so getting to do more of that every day has just been such a treat. We've been big focus of this year has been on the U.S. market. So integrating with a lot of the big U.S. PMS players like Track and Streamline, Escapia, and those folks. So that's opened up a whole other sort of category of conference and folks and how they do business today, and learning a lot on that side of the industry. Whereas last year, I think we were a bit more international focused. So all that's pretty good. And we're rolling out a new version of the product. We spent the last 6 months building, using about 18 months of experience from the software side. It's the product I've always dreamt of building, and the feedback and demand so far has been really exciting. So to sort of add fuel to the fire, we actually, just 7 months ago, we raised a $1.5 million seed round. And then on Friday, we just closed another, sort of an announcement. We just closed another $1 million to just like hit the gas on this new product and distribution. So you guys got the scoop on that.
Breaking news. Heard it here first.
Breaking news. Let's go. Well, congratulations to you guys and the team. I'm sure that's a big victory, right? To be able to add more fuel to the fire and kind of boost morale a little bit.
For sure. It's sort of, you're in this constant state of when you're, on the software side of, growing and managing burn and all these trade-offs of how much you want to invest versus how close you want to fly to the sun in terms of like coming up for air. But thankfully we were in a good position, itching near profitability and with enough in the bank that this was purely, opportunistic. Of course, it's nice to have some downside protection. I mean, anybody who raises between rounds, telling you that it wasn't just at all, like it was purely opportunistic is sort of full of it. So of course that is a factor that we want to make sure that we're always in a good spot, that we're never in a risk of running out of money or, especially with people trusting us with more and more of their operation with this new product, that it just inspires a lot of confidence with our customers and of course like the team and everything. So call it a bridge, call it a top up, whatever you will. Either way, things are going extremely well and we're pumped.
And you're also right now going through what I would imagine a lot of software companies wish they could, but they have far too much technical debt. Walk us through going from V1 to V2.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like this is all happening live as we speak. Like we just started reaching out to all of our existing users over the last few weeks. And so there's that whole transition. And then in addition, on Streamline and Track and Escapia, we're just launching the V2 products. So it's all net new for them. And then we're sort of bringing everybody on the other PMSs, Besty and Hospita, sort of up to speed. And so it's like, it feels like pushing and pulling at the same time. It's a little tricky. So we're just trying to basically land a plane and go to all these users who've been with us for, in some cases, almost a year and a half, and show them that it says, look, like instead of patching holes and Band-Aid solutions to the problems you've had or the feature requests you've had, we just built this thing from the ground up. But it is a lot of work just to communicate all that. And I'm trying to be as much as I can on the front lines, because a lot of the cases, like a lot of those folks I worked with personally before having a team. So it has been a lot of fun. And I think the output, if a couple months from now, when everything settles, it'll all be good, but it's a little hectic right now.
And it's not just guest messaging, right? I mean, I think what everybody associates with AI in hospitality across the board is cool. It's really good guest messaging. I don't have to do that again. I don't have to hire a team in the Philippines or whatever, or work nights and weekends, get the team exhausted. Great feature, but that's not the core. It's not central.
Yeah. So the way I think you could look at our first product was sort of the tip of the iceberg in like a few different categories, where I think that we were pushing what the models at the time were capable of, the latest like ChatGPT model or Gemini, Google model. But the reality is, 6 months later, 8 months later, like since we started the product, the models have gotten so much smarter. So our V2 basically takes like a lot more depth. So instead of, like, a great example is like our V1 that would find a gap night and send a simple message, and that's it. And then it would just crap out. Our V2 will, take that, somebody accepts it, then block the calendar, charge their credit card, update the folio, message the guest, update the cleaners, and do the full cycle. And you can picture that full cycle, not on just upselling, but on issue and task management and work orders and that kind of thing. And then building them basically a whole new place to operate. So it's just this fine line between how do you give them empower them to keep their source of truth, which is the PMS, but then also make the workflows easier. And then so that's kind of canvas across the whole new product, which I think has been speaking to people.
I'm curious, just from a more like AI landscape type of thing. These models are getting so much smarter, like you said, faster. ChatGPT. We saw what was that Chinese one that came out? The
DeepSeek. Yeah, DeepSeek.
DeepSeek. Yeah. So all these are coming out, and it seems like it's getting faster, smarter, cheaper as time goes on. Are you guys imagining the same thing in the hospitality space when it comes to at least the Besty product? I know there's some other competitors out there or even the PMS is creating their own kind of AI chat model. How do you guys see the evolution and the speed of this AI sector growing within hospitality specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like there's only one customer, whether you're the PMS or a vendor, and that's the property manager. And our whole mandate across the board, across all these vendors, in any capacity or any categories, make their life easier. And there's always been a narrative about a lot of these features being possible at the PMS level. I understand as an operator, I don't like the idea of having 10 vendors. I'd much rather have one or two. And so if I were a PMS, I could be pretty selfish and just for the sake of making the customer the happiest. But they've been really cool with supporting third-party vendors and making it really easy for us to springboard basically out of nowhere. And if it weren't for them, it would be much harder to find these customers. So I think that it's a high tide rises all ships, and it's going to educate the industry on everybody using it. And the increased model intelligence is just going to make people more excited about it, and ultimately customers will vote with their feet. And we do have a benefit right now, which is singular focus around AI automation, which will not always be the case. But for now, I think we do have a big edge that's all we can focus on and just be the best possible product. And then, let that cascade over the next few years.
Yeah, I love that. Well, before we jump in, just want to say again, congratulations to you and the team. It's super exciting to watch your guys' growth, to watch the product grow. Watching you grow, it's been incredible from the day that we first met you. So it's been pretty phenomenal to watch you these last 18 months. And for the listeners, talking about growth, we have to, of course, give our amazing sponsors at Fido a big shout out as they have continued to grow their bin to curb trash service, not only in Dallas, Texas, but all over the country, as they have continued to acquire bin to curb companies and more as they are continuing to announce and queue things up for us. So if you are an operator and you are tired of missing trash day, and of course, there's other services that Fido offers, from maintenance services to inspections and many other things, then you need to go to getfido.com today and let them know that the crew from GMH has sent you. Now, without further ado, we are back to the episode. And Sam, this is a kind of a perfect topic to queue up. But Michael, I would love for you to introduce this article that we have discovered.
Sure.
And now with Sam's announcement, it's kind of perfect timing, perfect segue.
Yeah, I mean, the headline from Skift is what's holding back investment in the travel industry. And it dovetails off of ITB conference in Berlin. So Stan, without reading into the article too much, what do you think is holding back investment in the travel industry?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two buckets. Just my initial reaction to reading that was that there's sort of the could call it consumer investment, which is representative by like growing inventory on Airbnb and people deciding to do their own sort of mom and pop vacation rentals, which ultimately prove more value to the professional property manager. If you have thousands of individual self-owned people signing up, you have a benchmark to go to them as a property manager and say, I can get you better performance, which is just a net positive as like sort of the top of funnel for the professionalized class. And I don't see, I mean, aside from the same story around maybe regulation and over like low occupancy and too much inventory, I think that a lot of that is washed away with the last interest rate cycle. And so on the consumer level, consumer meaning, your individual one or two vacation rental, second property investment units, that remains very positive and strong. I would say if there was ever a time for it to cascade, it would have been into the higher interest rate environments, but I think a lot of people got washed out there. And so that is sort of one side of it that's most relevant, I think, for us meaning the short-term rental industry. And then broadly speaking, on the sort of institutional investor side, I think it's funny, you really have next to no investment, at least what you would consider as a venture investment in this space to this day, despite I think a lot of prominent growth at the consumer level with Airbnb and Booking.com and just hitting these sort of record numbers. Meanwhile, a lot of the software enablement tools, there just hasn't been a big appetite. I know for us, it was really hard to raise money. Honestly, it was hard. There's not a big appetite there. Maybe this was popular a decade ago, but now it just seems a bit more like late stage private equity, like founder cash out sort of deals and less like true growth rounds, which is, if you can pull it off is great, at least for us to move fast. But it is interesting that it feels like you have over $1 trillion spent on lodging and accommodations a year and barely any investment money going into it. And that ITB thing referenced, Waymo is travel, like that's not really our space.
On that, there's the good news of travel investments is that it's doubled year over year, 2023 to 2024. So signs of life are coming back. Particularly the short-term rental space was very, very hot, drafting off of Airbnb's massive growth, and then also drafting off of the COVID, boom for vacation rentals, which ultimately hurt a lot of travel, but it was really, really strong for short-term rentals. What the article highlights, and this is from the ITB conference, Jan Frederick Valentin, a partner with Enea Capital. I'm not familiar with them myself, but basically tourism is 10% of the global GDP, it's a massive, massive industry, but it only accounts for 5% of global investments. So what that's kind of telling me is twofold, but probably the biggest takeaway is travel is fragmented and it's really not wildly investable. Only half of the businesses in essence are going to be investable. I don't even think it's that directly, but you look at the consolidators like Airbnb, Booking, and Expedia. They're winning. They're doing really well. All three of them blew out earnings. It was a really good Q4 for them. But the little guys, the mom and pops or the operators with 50 units in a single market and a destination have largely seen a downward trend. And I think there's this dichotomy between the consolidated big businesses. We saw Muse just raise another, 75 million last week or this week. So the big guys are getting bigger. We're very, very much in the consolidation phase. We've seen this coming in hospitality for a while, but it's part of the growing up of the software side. It's part of the growing up of the big boys. And then there's this big gap between Series A, Series B, Series C companies. And then the investment is largely going into either there's big consolidators or into very early stage disruptors like Besty.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I also think that we're reaching an interesting sort of chapter that I could map this against what I've seen is that if it's that easy for PMS partners to basically empower new emerging vendors that all bring a unique, value prop to the space, and the number of vendors if you look at Oracle and Opera, they have 800 partners, right? So Guesty Hostaway having 200, 300. The funny thing is it's not easy, but there's a set number of steps to launch and get traction for the first, call it, year. But I think there's this big, like you said, drop off of 200 people will start in the 2023 cohort of new vendors in the STR space. And now we're mapped 18 months out from that, maybe 20 of those will still be around. And 18 months from now, maybe 3 or 4 of those will still be around. And then it breaks off into some will just go and get bought out by some private equity firm, and some will break out and be their own sort of growth stage company. And you've seen that with a couple really, Breezeway being a great example of just a breakout industry defining company, Price Labs, Wheelhouse, a category creating and defining, and then their DNA. Yeah. So that's an interesting point. I completely agree.
Yeah. I used to joke before Verma every year. It's we're going to see 3 new PMSs and we're going to see 3 that didn't show up again this year. So, it was this cycle of launching new tech, early traction, meaning they got a handful of customers, and then just massive stall. And
I think that's a sign of it. Sorry to interrupt. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And bridging that gap is, crossing the chasm as I forget which book it was. Maybe it's actually called Crossing the Chasm, is the hard part, right? Anyone can get some early signs, and that, as entrepreneurs, we're going to kind of blindly run into things being very excited. We've got traction, we've got growth. And then you hit a wall. And it's wow, you retro back and okay, I should have seen that one coming, but my founder glasses, my founder goggles got in the way.
Yeah, but I think that's a sign of a vibrant ecosystem. The fact that you have new players coming in and sort of survival of the fittest, at the cost sometimes of cracking a few eggs from the customer's perspective, but they're also very open and willing to try new things. It's always really refreshing to find out how open folks are to trying something, and they're very logical. It's if this thing has a 30% likelihood of being, a 2x or even a 50% improvement on my current operations, I'll give it some time, And so I like that I thought that it would be much harder to sort of break into a lot of these spaces, but it's been very well welcomed. But then ultimately it's your job to execute. You have to live up to the hype, especially in a category like ours, where there's just so much noise. And I sort of scoff and roll my eyes to a lot of the times,
Every time AI is mentioned at a conference.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm part of the problem, so I can't say that too much.
Oh, one of the things I'm kind of wanting your input or take on, Sam, is I've been reading this book series behind me that our coffee is standing on, called Product is Hard by the Silicon Valley Group. And I'm just not convinced that the hospitality space has mastered product yet in terms of outside SaaS. If you look at the Duolingos, the whatever these big type of growth companies have been over the last 3-4 years, we don't see a strong product. I would say Breezeway, like you said, is a category defining product that is actually functional and going into defining. And I don't feel like we've really seen too much product enhancements or UI experience. Like, it's a lot of hacking and coding, which I get. Like, we're a scrappy sector of hospitality for the short-term rental side compared to the hotel world, where some things are a little bit more polished and a little bit more design forward. What are your thoughts on product in terms of hospitality, and is product super important for the end user, or do you think at the end of the day they just care about efficiencies and enhancement of operations rather than actual product usage?
Yeah, I think what you just described represents our biggest opportunity, that to just at like the sort of dogma in Silicon Valley is just, solving a problem, build something your customers adore and love, and network effects and people loving it so much they tell their neighbors and everybody starts using it and it just catches like wildfire. That's why even now you're seeing products go from like 0 to 100 million in annual revenue in a couple months. So now more than ever, there's a reason why that's now possible and that it's never happened before. I think for us, that is the number one biggest opportunity, is that the bar hasn't been set, extraordinarily high by having maybe 10 to 15 categories of vendor, each overlapping with a lot of functionality. And it's not as saying that as a pejorative at all. It's just that we have this whole new tool set, toolkit of automation and what these 150 IQ assistants sitting in your pocket that wasn't possible 10 years ago. So only now is it really I think the time that you can go with a fresh perspective to these operators and give them something they've never seen before, and then just continue to hammer home that value. And then we're not the only ones that are thinking that way, right? You do have a new class of vendor and competitor, even in our sort of, call it like new category, that people are seeing that and blowing folks away. Like, that's the number one thing we want to do. So I think that what you described represents both a problem and an opportunity, that if we're talking a few years from now, I think even these other categories will start to implement a lot of AI stuff to really blow people away. And the bar is just going to get higher. Like, I think that's what we're going to do, is we're just going to set the bar higher, that if we're going to compete against some other vendor, we're forcing them to be a better product. Otherwise, they're going to lose their customer. And then once again, only thing that matters is property managers being happy. So that's going to be a net positive for them as well.
When you were on the fundraise, I guess 7 months ago, I know this one was kind of less of a full-on fundraise, formal round or anything, but what's the education process like for short-term rentals for investors now? Because when I've done it in the past, 7 years ago or whatever, even when Romy rebranded from Sextant, the press said the Airbnb of apartments.
Yeah, they're taking on Airbnb. Yeah,
and there's a huge educational component to fundraising 7-8 years ago. Do people largely understand do investors largely understand the short-term rental market, or is there still a pretty big learning curve?
Yeah, I would say that like the overwhelming narrative is, why doesn't, to the off the street sort of generalist investor, they look to the first roll your eyes question is, why doesn't Airbnb do this? And you explain that like a PM, Airbnb could never be a PMS because Airbnb represents only a percentage of their portfolio and they would never be able to distribute onto other OTAs. But that to some outside investor already feels nuanced. And so if you can get them over that hump, the next thing is, these systems of record, property management systems, why on earth would it make sense to just be one of those little minnows that sits on a whale shark? Like, how is that the business? I want to be the whale shark, and so then you have to explain that that's in itself very fragmented, and there's big opportunity for those PMSs that is their incentives and what they're building. It doesn't necessarily align with the things that we can bring value to our customers on. And so I think those two hurdles, you have to really spend time and educate the investor on where the opportunity is, because I'd say there's probably, in the last 5 years, been about 200 or 300 million in annual revenue across point solutions in the short-term rental space, like ballpark, maybe more, not PMSs, maybe higher. Yeah, I'm saying, even no PMSs, probably maybe just south of a half a yard. And so I think there is an emerging opportunity there, but it's less obvious. And if you're an investor trying to find the next $500 million a year company, it's not obvious that it's going to be a point solution in this space. So it's definitely an uphill battle. The only thing that we can do to combat that is pure traction, great metrics, customers that love the product, that become our champions. And that is going to just take time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, is there the general excitement and enthusiasm about the space too, or is there a bit of explaining on where the life cycle of the industry is?
Yeah, I think it's entirely founder led. I mean, not to give us too much credit, but it's sort of to the investor, it's like they have to believe that I believe that it's possible less than they really have to believe it themselves. Because what they see is fragmentation. They see low TAM, they see low contract values, tons of competition, all crowded space, like commoditization of features. And so I think it's very like founder driven at this stage. And then just give us a shot, because I don't expect anyone to have the same degree of context as I do after speaking to thousands of property managers. All I tell my co-founders, if you could only see what I see, if you could only hear what I hear every day about how the current state of how people are doing things, you would be just as like crazily convinced as I am that we're onto something,
But to Michael's point earlier, I'm interested because if, every conference you go to, if we go to VRMA or if you go to the independent lodging conference or whatever these, conferences are on everyone's calendar every year, you expect the new PMS, and then you expect some to be disappeared, and then you expect these, like, there's obviously going to be some new players and people that think they know what they're doing because they manage one Airbnb and now they're they got this great idea for a new product because they saw the same problem, yet there's like 5 vendors next to them that can solve that problem that have been around a little bit longer, and this cycle just keeps going on and on and on. And yes, like I think that to Andrew Kitchell's point, who's kind of convinced me, yes, that it's just a strong sign of innovation in our space. But I feel like there is a kind of a misguided positivity that maybe like our industry has so much room, and they're not solving the real problem, and they're just really creating this. And so when you're talking to investors, or if I'm an investor looking at this space, I would see the life cycle of these startups not being super long. And so seeing like a Besty or seeing like a Muse or seeing like a Breezeway, I would look at that and be like, okay, this is going to be the team that wins in order like to outlast. Basically, it's like you just have to outlast your competition, which in my head isn't a very long life cycle in this sector, specifically short-term rentals. I think the hotel side is a completely different beast, with a little bit more traditional investment and a little bit more maturity in terms of the technology, on top of a huge legacy gap from new age tech to, like Michael was saying earlier, like there's some huge companies with tech debt. I would consider Oracle/Opera to be one of them. I haven't played with their cloud product in a while, but just thinking of the life cycle in short-term rental startups versus hotel or maybe even restaurants and other travel sectors, it just doesn't look like a long life cycle that I would be afraid to invest in, outside of like maybe picking the wrong company. I don't know. I could just be speaking out of my ass, but I'm trying to think of, just our industry is so prime for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. The biggest piece is like on one end is that the best product's going to win, but you don't want to end up in a circumstance where you could have been the right product at the wrong time, or the even the wrong product at the right time. And so I think like being so singularly focused on the one thing that like I would never bet against, which is just making the customer thrilled. Like if that's all we do, and we do that for the next 2 years in the same way we've done it to an extent for the last year and a half, I think we've broken so many eggs trying to figure this thing out that I would like to be judged on my next 12 months and not the last 12, I guess. But I think with the same spirit, that means showing up at the conferences, doing non-transactional, biz dev, like sitting down, talking to people, educating people, going on podcasts.
Not having your sales development people at the desk looking at their laptop the whole time.
Chasing them down. Yeah, if you go to any conference that we're at, we are working that place so hard. We are engaging with people. We are walking the floors. We're getting to know folks. Like we're having so much fun in the process. So I think like we just bring that sort of youth and excitement to the space, and not the naivete and never hubris at the same time, and compound that over a couple of years. And we'll see where the cards fall. But I think we're in a good spot. And that's the biggest reason why I think we raised the money. The extra money was just to get there and make sure that all we have to do is focus on the product and not worry about anything else.
Yeah, I think that was one of the very first things that we shared with you when you were looking at this space was it's not transactional. It's very much relationship driven. And so it sounds like you not only heeded that, but you've taken it 3 extra miles or 50 extra K as you like to run your ultras. One last question. Give us a prediction of what investment specifically in short-term rentals looks like over the next 12 to 24 months.
I think that there's been every day I'm learning of the sort of kind of underbelly of private equity investments in across both PMSs and vendors like Point Solutions. And the biggest, I think the only time that they're involved is when there's predictable revenue and something that like, I think it was Warren Buffett that says like, make your company idiot proof because one day an idiot will run it or something like that. I'm butchering it, but like the fact that there's involvement there means there is predictable enough revenue and sticky enough customers that I would love to see. I'd actually love to see less of that, because that is low multiple, early buyouts. They're only getting involved as financial partners to make a bunch of money. Which means that if founders were to hold out a bit longer and push their vision further, they could probably extend a much better product and vision and see it through. And I think if most people make it to that stage, they get approached. And yeah, sure, if I were approached tomorrow with some sort of like cool, like big enough deal that could change my life, I'm sure I would have a slightly different perspective, or at least consider it. But I do think that if we're all doing our jobs well, that we'll hold out and treat that signal as momentum to keep doing what we do best. Whereas I think the past, conventional wisdom has just been sort of sell. And I only know that based off of the private equity funds that reach out to us, not all the time, but once or twice a month, citing some deal they did. And I go, oh, I didn't know that vendor sold to that or did this deal. And so I'm just seeing a lot more of that. And so I think my prediction would be seeing less of that. I think that with good competition will come great investors. Good competition meaning great founders. And I would encourage more founders to look at this space, because I think there's a ton of opportunity, stuff that we're not even going to touch in the next few years that could be great businesses on their own. On the note of like innovating the product and also consolidating vendors in general. So I don't think that's maybe broad, but I think I would hope to see new entrants even now building something that is supposed to be defining and not just like a cash out 3-4 years from now.
I love it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well said. For all the listeners, make sure you grab the links in the show notes, because this is a pre-recorded episode, so we should have everything linked and pre-connected. But get a hold of Sam if you want to talk to him more. the Besty team is growing like crazy and the product is growing like crazy. So Sam, it's really exciting to watch you guys evolve and develop a good product. And I love that you're focused on the customer being thrilled rather than a quick just sales cycle and sign up and turn and burn type situation. So it's good to hear that. And for Michael, or actually, yeah, what do you guys got going on this week? Anything fun, exciting? I don't want to hear same old, same old. If I hear same old, I'm hitting outro right up, right?
Spring break. So
we
we're
go.
heading down to the beach. That's
Nice.
all three of us had to pre-record today because of travels next week.
Yes.
Nice.
Sam, what do you got going on this week?
I'm sort of pulling a page out of your book, Will. I'm going to San Francisco on I guess today, if you're listening to this, and to meet with a few funds leading up to our Series A, and really excited about that. And then actually going up to like any classic like VC thing, Tahoe. One of our investors is having a summit, so I'm gonna go meet some really cool. He's bringing in some really cool executives from all these companies that they backed way early that are now, big behemoth public companies. So just to learn a lot and get inspired to think really big, and I love those things. Just getting a bum shoulders with people that I would have never thought I got to. So I got to do that this week, which I've been looking forward to for like 6 months. So then back to business.
Lovely. Yeah, I love it. Well, I'll be at the Level Up Your Listing conference in Arizona. So for all of our Arizona listeners, check it out. Get your ticket if you haven't already. And Sam, have fun in Tahoe and in San Francisco. It's going to be a great time. And make sure that the dinner bill is hooked up on their side of the table, not yours. And outside of that, for all of our morning people, we'll see you on the next episode again next week. And check out the rest of the GMH series Tuesday, Wednesday, and now Thursday.